When my mother announced to the entire family dinner table that I was just a secretary and would never amount to anything significant, she had absolutely no idea that I owned the very corporation where she thought I was merely answering phones and filing papers. What happened next would shatter everything she believed about success, worth, and the daughter she had dismissed for the past 15 years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The crystal chandelier above the mahogany dining table cast dancing shadows across the faces of my family members as they engaged in their weekly ritual of professional one-upmanship. Every Sunday evening at 6 o'clock sharp, the Wellington family gathered at my mother's estate in Pacific Heights for what she diplomatically termed family dinner, but what everyone understood to be a carefully orchestrated performance of achievement and status comparison. My name is Alexandra Wellington Chen, though most people in my family still call me Alex with the same dismissive tone they might use for household staff. At 32 years old, I had spent the better part of the last decade being systematically underestimated, overlooked, and relegated to the margins of family conversations about career success and professional accomplishment. Tonight would prove to be the culmination of years of subtle dismissal and outright condescension that had shaped every family gathering since I graduated from Stanford, with what my mother considered impractical degrees in computer science and business administration. The dining room itself reflected my mother's particular brand of understated wealth and social positioning. Original oil paintings from minor but respectable artists lined the walls, while antique Persian rugs covered hardwood floors that had been refinished to museum-quality perfection. The table could seat 12 comfortably, though our typical family dinners rarely exceeded 8 people, creating an atmosphere of intimate grandeur that my mother cultivated with the precision of a professional event coordinator. Margaret Wellington, my mother, presided over these gatherings with the authority of someone who had spent 40 years climbing San Francisco's social hierarchy through strategic marriages, charitable board positions, and carefully maintained relationships with the city's most influential families. At 63, she remained elegant and formidable, her silver hair arranged in a style that suggested both sophistication and authority. Her background in public relations had taught her to manage conversations and control narratives with subtle but effective techniques that kept family discussions focused on topics that reflected favorably on her maternal influence and social status. My brother James occupied the seat to her right, a position that reflected both birth order and maternal favoritism that had been established decades earlier. At 35, James was a partner at Morrison, Sterling and Associates, one of the Poway city's most prestigious law firms, specializing in corporate mergers and acquisitions that generated substantial fees and impressive social credentials. His wife Jennifer, a pediatric surgeon at UCSF Medical Center, brought additional professional credibility to his already impressive resume of achievements that never failed to earn maternal approval and extended discussion during family dinners. My sister Catherine, 28 years old and the acknowledged family star, worked as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, managing portfolios for high-net-worth clients and generating the kind of income that translated directly into material symbols of success. Her recent promotion to vice president had been celebrated extensively during previous family gatherings, with detailed discussions of her salary, bonus structure, and future prospects for partnership that demonstrated the family's appreciation for quantifiable professional achievement. Then there was me, occupying the seat at the far end of the table, closest to the kitchen door, in what had become my traditional position during these weekly performances. According to family understanding, I worked as an administrative assistant at Meridian Technologies, a mid-sized software development company located in the South Bay. My job, as described in previous family conversations, involved answering phones, scheduling meetings, managing correspondence, and performing various clerical duties that required minimal specialized knowledge or advanced education. This understanding, was not entirely inaccurate, though it represented perhaps 5% of my actual professional reality. The family's perception had been carefully cultivated over several years through strategic omissions, deflected questions, and deliberate vagueness about my specific responsibilities and the nature of my relationship with Meridian Technologies. The reasons for this deception were complex and deeply rooted in family dynamics that had developed over decades of comparative achievement discussions and conditional approval based on conventional measures of professional success. The conversation that evening had followed its predictable trajectory through updates on recent professional accomplishments, social events, and material acquisitions that demonstrated continued upward mobility and social positioning. James discussed his latest case involving a major pharmaceutical merger, providing details about the legal complexities and financial scope that showcased his expertise and the prestige associated with his client base. Jennifer contributed updates about her research on pediatric cardiac procedures and her recent invitation to present at a national medical conference, achievements that earned immediate recognition and extended questioning about future opportunities. Catherine's contribution focused on her management of a particularly complex investment portfolio for a technology entrepreneur whose recent IPO had generated substantial returns for her clients and significant performance bonuses for herself. The discussion included specific figures and percentages that demonstrated both her professional competence and the financial rewards associated with her career trajectory, topics that invariably commanded substantial attention and approval from other family members. My mother orchestrated these conversations with the skill of an experienced moderator, asking follow-up questions that encouraged detailed explanations and provided opportunities for each successful family member to elaborate on their achievements and future prospects. Her technique involved subtle comparisons and gentle competition that motivated continued excellence while reinforcing the family's collective commitment to professional advancement and social mobility. When the conversation eventually turned to my professional situation, as it inevitably did during these gatherings, the tone shifted noticeably toward something that resembled polite condescension mixed with maternal concern about my apparent lack of ambition and career development. The questions were predictable and slightly patronizing, focusing on basic aspects of employment that assumed limited responsibility and minimal intellectual engagement. "How are things going at your office, Alexandra?" my mother inquired with the same tone she might use to ask a teenager about part-time work at a retail establishment. "Are you still working for that computer company in the South Bay? What exactly do they make there?" The question revealed both genuine ignorance about my professional situation and unconscious assumptions about the nature of administrative work and the people who performed such functions. Her understanding of my career had been shaped by decades of social conditioning that equated professional value with formal titles, public recognition, and salary figures that could be discussed appropriately in social settings. "I work at Meridian Technologies," I replied with the same measured neutrality that had characterized my responses to similar questions for several years. "We develop software solutions for enterprise clients, primarily focusing on data analytics and cybersecurity applications. The work involves coordinating between different departments and managing various administrative functions that support our development teams." This explanation, while technically accurate, represented a masterpiece of strategic ambiguity that conveyed sufficient information to satisfy casual inquiry while omitting details that might complicate the family's established understanding of my professional role and capabilities. The description satisfied their expectations about administrative work, while providing no information that might challenge their assumptions about my actual responsibilities or authority within the organization. James, displaying the kind of superficial interest that characterized most family interactions with my career, asked a follow-up question that revealed his complete lack of understanding about technology industry operations or the complexity of modern software development. "Do you think you might eventually get promoted to something more significant? Maybe move into sales or marketing where you could make better use of your education?" The question contained multiple assumptions that would have been insulting, if they were not so thoroughly predictable. The implication that administrative work was inherently less valuable than sales or marketing reflected common misconceptions about organizational hierarchy and the relative importance of different professional functions. More significantly, the suggestion that I needed to make better use of my education implied that my current position represented underutilization of my capabilities rather than a deliberate choice based on strategic considerations. "I find the work engaging and challenging," I responded, maintaining the diplomatic tone that had become my standard approach to family discussions about career satisfaction and professional development. "The technology industry offers many different paths for growth and contribution, and I am exploring various opportunities for expanded responsibility and involvement in strategic initiatives." This response, crafted through years of practice, provided reassurance about my professional contentment while suggesting potential for future advancement without committing to specific timelines or concrete objectives that might invite continued questioning or unwanted advice about career management strategies. Catherine, perhaps motivated by genuine concern or possibly by competitive instincts that viewed any family member's underachievement as a reflection on collective family success, offered unsolicited guidance about professional development that revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of my situation and capabilities. "Alex, you really should consider going back to school for an MBA or maybe getting some professional certifications that could help you move into management positions. The technology industry has so many opportunities for people with the right credentials and ambition. You are certainly smart enough to do more than answer phones and file papers." The casual dismissal of my current professional contributions as answering phones and filing papers would have been devastating if it were not so completely disconnected from reality. The suggestion that I needed additional education or credentials to qualify for management positions demonstrated remarkable ignorance about both my educational background and my actual professional status. Though this ignorance was entirely my own creation through years of careful information management, my mother, seizing upon Catherine's comments as an opportunity to expand the discussion into familiar territory about ambition, initiative, and the importance of maximizing one's potential, delivered what would become the defining statement of the evening and possibly the most significant miscalculation of her maternal career. "Alexandra, I worry that you have become too comfortable with mediocrity and limited expectations for yourself," she began, her voice carrying the weight of accumulated disappointment and frustrated maternal ambitions. "Your siblings have worked tremendously hard to build successful careers and establish themselves in competitive professional environments. They took risks, pursued excellence, and demonstrated the kind of drive and determination that leads to real achievement." The comparison was neither subtle nor unexpected, following patterns that had been established years earlier when family discussions about career success began focusing on quantifiable metrics and social recognition rather than personal satisfaction or professional fulfillment. The implicit message about my apparent lack of ambition and limited achievements had been communicated countless times through various approaches and conversations. "But you seem content to remain just a secretary, answering phones and doing basic administrative tasks for other people who are actually building successful businesses and making important decisions," she continued, her voice gaining intensity as she warmed to themes that had clearly been developing in her mind for some time. "You are 32 years old, Alexandra. At your age, your siblings were already establishing themselves as leaders in their fields and building the foundations for long-term success." The word "just" hung in the air like a physical presence, carrying decades of accumulated assumptions about professional hierarchy, social value, and the relative importance of different types of work. The characterization of my professional contributions as answering phones and doing basic administrative tasks represented such a fundamental misunderstanding of reality that it bordered on science fiction, though the family's acceptance of this narrative demonstrated how effectively I had managed information flow and shaped perceptions over several years. I understand that some people are naturally more ambitious than others, and perhaps you are satisfied with a simpler lifestyle and fewer professional challenges," my mother continued, apparently unaware that she was delivering what would prove to be one of the most ironic statements in family history. "But I cannot help feeling disappointed that you are wasting your potential and settling for so much less than you could achieve if you applied yourself seriously to career development." The patronizing tone and condescending assumptions about my professional capabilities and personal ambitions were breathtaking in their complete disconnection from reality, though they reflected genuine maternal concern filtered through decades of social conditioning about success, achievement, and the appropriate measures of professional value. As she continued her assessment of my career limitations and lack of professional development, I found myself experiencing a complex mixture of emotions that ranged from amusement at the spectacular inaccuracy of her perceptions to genuine sadness about the gulf that had developed between my family's understanding of my life and the actual reality of my professional situation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The irony was almost overwhelming in its completeness. While my mother critiqued my apparent lack of ambition and limited professional achievements, I was actually the founder and majority owner of Meridian Technologies, the computer company in the South Bay, where she believed I worked as an administrative assistant. The business had grown from a startup launched during my final year at Stanford into a profitable enterprise with annual revenues exceeding $50 million and contracts with major corporations, government agencies, and international clients. The company's success had been built on proprietary algorithms and software solutions that I had developed through years of intensive research and development, funded initially through personal savings and later through strategic investment partnerships that had preserved my controlling interest while providing capital for expansion and market development. Our client base included Fortune 500 companies, federal agencies, and international organizations that relied on our cybersecurity solutions and data analytics platforms for mission-critical operations. My role as administrative assistant had been a carefully constructed cover story that allowed me to maintain day-to-day oversight of company operations while avoiding the public attention and family scrutiny that would have complicated both business relationships and personal privacy. The deception had been necessary for multiple reasons, including competitive considerations, security concerns, and the simple desire to avoid the kind of family dynamics that would inevitably develop around such dramatic professional success. The decision to conceal my actual professional status had been made years earlier, when the company was still in early development stages, and family discussions about career choices had become increasingly judgmental and intrusive. Rather than endure constant questions about business strategy, financial performance, and long-term planning, I had chosen to maintain a simple cover story that satisfied family curiosity while protecting both business confidentiality and personal autonomy. As my mother concluded her assessment of my professional limitations with recommendations about career counseling, additional education, and the importance of developing more ambitious goals, I realized that the time had come to address the fundamental misconceptions that had shaped family perceptions for several years. The conversation had reached a point where continued deception was not only unnecessary, but potentially harmful to relationships that remained important despite their complexity and occasional dysfunction. The moment required careful consideration of multiple factors, including family dynamics, business implications, and personal relationships that extended beyond immediate family members to include spouses, extended relatives, and social connections, who had been exposed to the carefully maintained narrative about my professional situation. The revelation would necessarily involve explanations about the reasons for prolonged deception and the considerations that had motivated such elaborate information management over several years. But as I looked around the dining room at family, members who had spent years treating me as the underachieving relative whose career choices reflected poorly on collective family success, I understood that some truths could no longer be postponed indefinitely. The gap between perception and reality had grown so wide that continued maintenance of the deception required increasingly complex explanations and strategic omissions that were becoming difficult to sustain. The chandelier continued casting its dancing shadows across the mahogany table as I prepared to deliver information that would fundamentally transform every family member's understanding of professional success, hidden achievements, and the dangerous assumptions that people make about others based on limited information and social prejudices. What happened next would prove that sometimes the most powerful revelations come from the people who have been systematically underestimated, and that true success is often invisible to those who measure achievement only through conventional metrics and public recognition. The evening was about to demonstrate that my mother's assessment of my professional limitations was not merely incorrect, but so spectacularly wrong that it would become a defining moment in our family's history. The conversation was about to shift from patronizing career advice to a revelation that would challenge everything my family believed about success, ambition, and the daughter they had dismissed as just a secretary for the past 15 years. 7 years earlier, the trajectory of my professional life had followed a remarkably different path than the one my family currently understood. Fresh from Stanford University with dual degrees in computer science and business administration, I had entered the technology sector during one of its most dynamic periods of growth and innovation. My academic performance had been exceptional, graduating summa cum laude with research focused on cybersecurity algorithms and enterprise data protection systems that would later become the foundation for Meridian Technologies. The decision to pursue technology rather than following family expectations toward law, medicine, or finance had been met with skeptical tolerance from my mother and siblings, who viewed the industry as somewhat beneath the social status associated with traditional professional careers. Their understanding of technology work was limited to stereotypical images of antisocial programmers working in basement offices, creating products that generated substantial profits for other people, while remaining personally invisible and professionally marginalized. This fundamental misunderstanding of the technology industry's potential for wealth creation and social influence had actually provided significant advantages during the early development of my business plans. While my family dismissed my career choice as acceptable but unambitious, I was developing expertise in sectors that were transforming global commerce and creating unprecedented opportunities for entrepreneurial success. My first position after graduation was with Cyber Solutions International, an established cybersecurity firm located in Palo Alto that specialized in enterprise-level data protection and threat assessment. The company had built a solid reputation serving Fortune 500 clients who required sophisticated security systems to protect intellectual property, financial data, and strategic planning information from increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. The work environment at Cyber Solutions was intellectually stimulating and professionally challenging, providing exposure to complex technical problems and high-stakes client relationships that demanded both analytical expertise and strategic thinking. My responsibilities included developing security protocols, analyzing threat patterns, and designing custom solutions for clients whose operations were critical to national infrastructure and economic stability. The position offered excellent learning opportunities and competitive compensation, but after 18 months of employment, I began recognizing fundamental limitations in the company's approach to cybersecurity that suggested significant market opportunities for more innovative solutions. The existing products were effective but expensive, complex to implement, and difficult for non-technical personnel to manage effectively. Most corporate clients struggled with cybersecurity systems that required specialized knowledge and constant technical support, creating ongoing dependencies that increased costs while limiting flexibility. The market clearly needed solutions that provided enterprise-level protection while remaining accessible to organizations without extensive technical resources or dedicated IT departments. During evening hours and weekends, I began developing prototype software that addressed these market gaps through innovative approaches to automated threat detection, user-friendly interfaces, and scalable security architectures that could adapt to different organizational sizes and technical capabilities. The development work was intensive and time-consuming, requiring hundreds of hours of coding, testing, and refinement to create products that met the performance standards necessary for commercial viability. The breakthrough came during my analysis of a particularly sophisticated attack on one of Cyber Solutions' major clients, a regional banking network that had been targeted by international cybercriminals using advanced techniques that bypassed conventional security measures. The attack patterns revealed vulnerabilities in standard protection systems that could be addressed through entirely different technological approaches. My proposed solution involved artificial intelligence algorithms that could learn from attack patterns and adapt defensive measures in real time, creating security systems that became more effective over time rather than requiring constant updates and manual configuration. The concept represented a fundamental advancement in cybersecurity technology that could provide superior protection while reducing implementation complexity and ongoing maintenance requirements. When I presented this innovation to Cyber Solutions' executive team, their response was disappointing, but not entirely surprising. The company's business model was built around long-term service relationships and ongoing technical support that generated predictable revenue streams. My proposed solution, while technically superior, would reduce client dependencies and potentially disrupt established profit centers. The executive team acknowledged the innovation's technical merits, but expressed concerns about market disruption and competitive implications that might affect existing client relationships. They offered to purchase my intellectual property for development within their existing product lines, with compensation that reflected their assessment of its value as incremental improvement rather than revolutionary advancement. The offer was financially attractive for someone in my position, representing approximately 2 years of salary plus performance bonuses that would have provided significant financial security. However, accepting the offer would have meant surrendering control over technology that I believed could transform the cybersecurity industry and create substantially greater value through independent development and strategic market positioning. After weeks of careful consideration and analysis of various alternatives, I made the decision that would ultimately lead to Meridian Technologies and the professional success that my family remained unaware of 7 years later. I declined Cyber Solutions' acquisition offer and submitted my resignation, choosing to pursue independent development of the cybersecurity innovations that had emerged from my research and client experience. The decision involved substantial personal and financial risks that were difficult to assess accurately at the time. Leaving stable employment to launch a technology startup required confidence in both the market potential of my innovations and my own capabilities as an entrepreneur and business manager. The transition from employee to business owner demanded skills in marketing, finance, operations, and strategic planning that were not directly related to my technical expertise. My savings account contained approximately $60,000, accumulated through careful financial management during my employment at Cyber Solutions. This amount provided sufficient resources for several months of independent development work, but it was inadequate for the comprehensive business launch that would be necessary to compete effectively with established companies in the cybersecurity market. The initial business plan focused on developing minimum viable products that could demonstrate the effectiveness of my technological innovations to potential clients and investors. Rather than attempting to create comprehensive solutions immediately, I concentrated on specific applications that addressed clearly defined market needs while requiring minimal initial investment in equipment, personnel, or marketing. Working from a converted garage space in a Redwood City warehouse district, I spent the first 6 months refining my artificial intelligence algorithms and developing user interfaces that made advanced cybersecurity accessible to organizations without dedicated technical staff. The development process required 16-hour workdays and complete focus on technical challenges that demanded both creative problem-solving and meticulous attention to detail. The breakthrough product that established Meridian Technologies as a viable business was SecureGuard Pro, an automated cybersecurity system that provided enterprise-level protection through machine learning algorithms that required minimal configuration and maintenance. The system monitored network traffic, identified potential threats, and implemented defensive measures without requiring constant human oversight or technical expertise. Beta testing with 3 small businesses demonstrated that SecureGuard Pro could prevent cyber attacks that had previously required expensive consulting services and specialized technical support. The system's effectiveness, combined with its user-friendly design, created immediate market interest from organizations that had been unable to afford comprehensive cybersecurity solutions. The first commercial sale occurred 8 months after, leaving Cyber Solutions, when a medical practice in San Jose purchased SecureGuard Pro to protect patient records and comply with healthcare data protection regulations. The client was representative of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses that needed enterprise-level security but lacked resources for traditional cybersecurity systems. Revenue from initial sales provided capital for expanded product development and limited marketing efforts that focused on demonstrating measurable results rather than technical specifications that potential clients might not understand. The marketing strategy emphasized return on investment, compliance benefits, and peace of mind, rather than algorithmic complexity or technical superiority. Within 18 months, Meridian Technologies had generated sufficient revenue to support expanded operations and additional product development. The client base included medical practices, law firms, accounting offices, and small manufacturing companies that valued cybersecurity solutions designed for their specific operational requirements, rather than generic products developed for large corporations. The business growth created demand for expanded capabilities and additional personnel, but I was reluctant to hire employees before establishing sustainable revenue streams and operational procedures that could support consistent growth. The decision to maintain minimal overhead while maximizing reinvestment in product development proved crucial for long-term success and competitive positioning. During this period of rapid business development, family dinners had become increasingly uncomfortable as my siblings' careers advanced through traditional professional hierarchies, while my work remained difficult to explain or categorize according to conventional measures of success. Rather than attempt detailed explanations of cybersecurity technology and entrepreneurial challenges, I had begun providing simplified descriptions that satisfied family curiosity without inviting complex discussions. The transition from cybersecurity consultant to administrative assistant at a technology company had been gradual and strategically managed to reduce family attention while protecting business confidentiality. The deception became necessary when early clients included organizations that required absolute discretion about their security measures and vendor relationships. Government contracts and financial services clients demanded confidentiality agreements that prohibited public discussion of our business relationships, making it impossible to share specific details about Meridian Technologies' growth and success. With family members who might inadvertently compromise sensitive information through casual social conversations. The administrative assistant cover story provided perfect protection for both business confidentiality and personal privacy, while satisfying family expectations about appropriate career progression and professional development. The narrative was simple enough to remember consistently and boring enough to discourage detailed follow-up questions. By the 3rd year of operations, Meridian Technologies had established relationships with major corporate clients whose security requirements demanded continuous innovation and expanded service capabilities. The artificial intelligence algorithms had evolved through constant refinement and real-world testing to provide protection that exceeded the effectiveness of systems costing 10 times more than our solutions. The company's reputation for reliable, cost-effective cybersecurity had attracted attention from government agencies responsible for protecting critical infrastructure and sensitive national security information. Federal contracts provided both substantial revenue and validation of our technological capabilities that opened doors to additional opportunities in the defense and intelligence sectors. Managing rapid business growth while maintaining the administrative Assistant cover story required increasingly sophisticated information management and strategic omissions during family conversations. Business success created lifestyle changes that were difficult to explain through administrative salary, necessitating creative explanations for improved housing, travel opportunities, and financial stability. The investment in a modest condominium in Redwood City was attributed to excellent credit and favorable loan terms, rather than cash purchase from business profits. Vacation trips were explained through frequent flyer miles and group discounts rather than business travel deductions. Professional development courses and industry conferences were described as company-sponsored training rather than essential business education. These explanations were technically accurate while omitting significant details about their underlying financial and professional context. The strategy preserved family relationships while protecting business interests and personal privacy that had become increasingly important as Meridian Technologies expanded into markets requiring absolute discretion. The fourth year brought international expansion opportunities as European and Asian organizations recognized the superior effectiveness and cost advantages of our cybersecurity solutions. International contracts required sophisticated legal and financial structures that transformed Meridian Technologies from small business into multinational corporation with complex operational requirements. Revenue growth had exceeded all initial projections, generating profits that were reinvested in research and development, market expansion, and strategic acquisitions that strengthened our competitive position and technological capabilities. The business had evolved far beyond my original vision, while maintaining focus on innovative solutions that addressed real market needs rather than creating products for their own sake. The success had been built through careful attention to client relationships, continuous technological innovation, and strategic business decisions that prioritized long-term sustainability over short-term profits. Every major decision had been evaluated based on its potential impact on both immediate performance and future growth opportunities. As I sat in my mother's dining room 7 years after leaving Cyber Solutions, listening to family members discuss their career achievements and professional development, I reflected on the remarkable journey that had transformed a simple cybersecurity innovation into a global business enterprise generating annual revenues that exceeded the combined incomes of all other family members. The irony was profound and increasingly difficult to maintain. While my family expressed concern about my limited professional ambitions and career development, I was actually managing a technology company whose innovations protected critical infrastructure, government, systems, and corporate data for organizations around the world. The computer company in the South Bay, where they believed I answered phones and filed papers, was actually my own creation, built through years of intensive work and strategic decision-making that had generated both financial success and professional recognition within the cybersecurity industry. The moment had arrived when continued deception was no longer sustainable or necessary, and when family relationships required the honesty that had been postponed for years in the interest of business confidentiality and personal privacy. The tie-dye revelation would necessarily involve explaining not only the scope of my professional success, but also the reasons for maintaining such elaborate information management over an extended period. But first, my mother needed to complete her assessment of my career limitations and recommendations for improvement, unaware that she was critiquing the professional achievements of someone who had already surpassed every measure of success that she might use to evaluate career development and business accomplishment. The psychological complexity of maintaining such an elaborate deception had evolved over 7 years, from simple privacy protection into a sophisticated exercise in identity management that affected every aspect of my personal and professional relationships. What had begun as a practical business decision to protect confidential client information had gradually transformed into a comprehensive alternative reality that required constant attention and strategic communication to sustain effectively. The mental energy required to maintain 2 completely different professional identities was exhausting in ways that I had never anticipated when first implementing the administrative assistant cover story. Every family gathering, social interaction, and casual conversation demanded careful consideration of which information could be shared safely and which details might compromise the carefully constructed narrative that protected both business interests and personal privacy. Living with such fundamental deception created a persistent sense of isolation that was difficult to address through conventional means. While my siblings and parents viewed me as underachieving and professionally stagnant, I was actually managing complex international business operations that demanded constant strategic thinking and decision-making authority that exceeded their professional responsibilities in scope and consequence. The disconnect between external perceptions and internal reality had become particularly challenging during periods of significant business success that would normally be celebrated and shared with family members who provided emotional support and validation. Major contract wins, technological breakthroughs, and international expansion milestones were achievements that remained invisible to the people whose approval and recognition had shaped my early development and continued to influence my sense of personal satisfaction. Meridian Technologies had recently completed its most successful quarter in company history, with revenue growth exceeding 40% compared to the previous year, and profit margins that reflected both operational efficiency and premium pricing for innovative solutions that competitors could not match. The financial performance had attracted acquisition offers from major corporations whose executives recognized the strategic value of our technological capabilities and established client relationships. These acquisition discussions involved substantial sums that would have provided immediate financial security beyond any conventional definition of wealth, but accepting external investment or acquisition would have meant surrendering the independence and creative control that had made Meridian Technologies possible in the first place. The decision to maintain private ownership required ongoing personal investment and professional commitment that limited lifestyle choices while preserving long-term strategic flexibility. The irony of my situation had become increasingly apparent during recent family gatherings where financial concerns and career advancement strategies dominated conversation topics. While my siblings discussed mortgage payments, retirement planning, and professional development goals that reflected their current income levels and future earning potential, I was actually managing assets and business operations that generated monthly revenues exceeding their annual salaries. The psychological burden was compounded by growing awareness that the deception was becoming more difficult to maintain, as business success created lifestyle changes that required increasingly creative explanations. The modest Redwood City condominium had been replaced by a contemporary home in Los Altos Hills that reflected both personal preferences and professional requirements for hosting client meetings and maintaining appropriate business image. The new residence was purchased through carefully structured financial arrangements that preserved privacy while meeting legitimate business needs for professional entertaining and client relationship management. The property included a home office equipped with secure communication systems and specialized technology infrastructure that supported remote management of international operations and confidential client consultations. Explaining the upgraded housing to family members had required strategic references to favorable market conditions, excellent credit ratings, and group investment opportunities that were technically accurate while omitting the substantial cash component that reflected business profits rather than administrative salary savings. The explanations satisfied casual inquiry while avoiding detailed discussions that might reveal inconsistencies in the established narrative. Similar challenges had emerged regarding travel patterns that reflected business requirements rather than vacation planning or personal interests. International conferences, client meetings, and strategic planning sessions required frequent trips to major cities around the world, creating a travel schedule that was inconsistent with typical administrative assistant responsibilities and compensation levels. The solution involved describing business travel as company-sponsored training programs, industry conferences, and professional development opportunities that demonstrated employer investment in employee advancement. These explanations were received positively by family members who interpreted increased travel as evidence of career development. and expanded professional opportunities within the technology sector. The most challenging aspect of maintaining the deception involved managing the emotional and psychological effects of systematic underestimation by people whose opinions remained important despite their fundamental misconceptions about my professional capabilities and achievements. Family gatherings had become exercises in patience and self-control as I listened to career advice, professional development suggestions, and expressions of concern about my apparent lack of ambition. The patronizing tone that characterized family discussions about my career reflected genuine concern, mixed with unconscious condescension that was difficult to address without revealing information that would complicate both business operations and family relationships. Their advice about pursuing additional education, seeking promotion opportunities, and developing more ambitious professional goals was particularly ironic given the scope of my actual responsibilities and achievements. The psychological impact extended beyond family relationships to affect my broader social interactions and professional networking within the technology industry. Maintaining the administrative assistant identity required avoiding public speaking opportunities, industry recognition programs, and professional associations that might create visibility inconsistent with the established cover story. This self-imposed limitation on professional recognition had prevented participation in conferences, award programs, and leadership opportunities that would normally be expected for someone with my level of expertise and business success. The decision to remain professionally invisible was necessary for protecting business confidentiality and maintaining family deception, but it also limited opportunities for industry influence and professional development that extended beyond immediate business operations. The internal conflict between authentic professional identity and necessary public persona had created a form of cognitive dissonance that required constant mental energy to manage effectively. The gap between internal reality and external perception had grown so wide that maintaining consistency demanded careful attention to every public statement and social interaction. Recent months had brought additional pressures as Meridian Technologies attracted increasing attention from industry analysts, potential competitors, and government agencies interested in our technological capabilities and market position. The company's success was becoming more visible within professional circles, creating risks that someone might connect the anonymous business owner with the administrative assistant who attended family dinners in Pacific Heights. The cybersecurity industry was relatively small and interconnected, particularly at the executive level where strategic relationships and personal networks played crucial roles in business development and competitive positioning. My efforts to maintain anonymity were becoming more difficult as industry recognition increased, and business relationships expanded to include people who might have social connections with my family members. This growing visibility had forced careful consideration of the long-term sustainability of the deception and the potential consequences of maintaining separate professional and personal identities indefinitely. The psychological costs were increasing while the practical benefits were becoming less compelling, as business success reduced the need for privacy protection and family approval became less important for personal validation. The decision to reveal my actual professional status had been developing gradually over several months as various factors converged to make continued deception both more difficult and less necessary. The business had achieved sufficient stability and success to withstand any potential negative consequences from family discussion or social attention. The client base was secure enough that confidentiality breaches would not threaten essential business relationships. More importantly, the personal costs of maintaining the deception had begun to outweigh the benefits of privacy protection and family harmony. The emotional isolation created by systematic underestimation was affecting my ability to maintain authentic relationships with people whose opinions remained important, despite their misconceptions about my professional capabilities. The revelation would necessarily involve explaining not only the scope of my business success, but also the reasons for maintaining such elaborate deception over an extended period. Family members would need to understand the practical considerations that had motivated the initial decision to protect business confidentiality, as well as the psychological factors that had sustained the administrative assistant identity long after its original purpose had been fulfilled. The explanation would require careful attention to family dynamics and individual personalities that would influence how different people processed information that challenged their fundamental assumptions about professional success, family roles, and personal capabilities. My mother's reaction would likely be complex, involving surprise, confusion, and possibly resentment about being excluded from such significant aspects of my life. My siblings' responses would probably reflect their competitive instincts and professional pride, as the revelation would necessarily involve acknowledging that their dismissive attitudes toward my career had been based on completely inaccurate information. The discovery that their underachieving sister had actually built a more successful business than their combined professional accomplishments might create relationship tensions that would require careful management. The broader family implications would extend beyond immediate reactions to affect future gatherings, social interactions, and the fundamental dynamics that had characterized our relationships for several years. The revelation would necessarily change how family members viewed both my capabilities and their own professional achievements, potentially creating new sources of competition and comparison that might be more complex than the current dynamic. Despite these concerns about potential negative consequences, the decision to reveal the truth had become inevitable, as the psychological burden of deception outweighed the benefits of continued privacy and family harmony. The conversation that was about to unfold would demonstrate whether authentic relationships could survive the revelation of such fundamental deception, and whether family bonds were strong enough to withstand the discovery that their assumptions about success and achievement had been spectacularly incorrect. As my mother continued her assessment of my career limitations and professional development needs, I prepared to deliver information that would transform every family member's understanding of business success, hidden achievements, and the dangerous assumptions that people make about others based on limited information and unconscious prejudices. The moment had arrived when truth would necessarily replace carefully maintained fiction, regardless of the consequences for family relationships and social dynamics. The chandelier above the mahogany table seemed to cast sharper shadows as I considered the magnitude of the revelation that was about to unfold, and the permanent changes that would necessarily result from choosing honesty over comfortable deception that had protected everyone's feelings while preventing authentic understanding and genuine relationship development. The time for strategic omissions and careful explanations had ended, and the era of complete transparency was about to begin, with all the risks and opportunities that such fundamental change would necessarily bring to family relationships that had been based on systematic misunderstanding for the past 7 years. The silence that followed my mother's final assessment of my professional limitations stretched across the dining room like a physical presence, heavy with accumulated assumptions and misplaced certainty about career trajectories and personal achievement. The crystal chandelier continued its gentle swaying motion, casting shifting patterns of light across the mahogany table where 7 years of carefully maintained deception was about to dissolve into transparent truth. I placed my hands flat against the polished wood surface, feeling the substantial weight and quality of furniture that represented my mother's appreciation for enduring value and authentic craftsmanship. The irony was not lost on me that she had surrounded herself with objects whose true worth was immediately apparent to anyone with sufficient knowledge to recognize quality, while simultaneously failing to recognize comparable value in her own daughter's professional accomplishments. The decision to reveal the complete truth about Meridian Technologies and my actual role as founder and majority owner had crystallized during my mother's extended critique of my apparent lack of ambition and professional development. The gap between perception and reality had become so absurd that continued deception was no longer tenable, regardless of the potential consequences for family relationships and social dynamics. "Mother," I began, my voice carrying a measured calm that reflected years of executive decision-making and high-stakes business negotiations. I need to correct some fundamental misconceptions about my professional situation that have shaped this conversation and many others over the past several years. The formality of my tone was deliberate and strategic, establishing a different dynamic than the typical family discussion about career development and personal achievements. The shift in communication style was designed to signal that the information about to be shared would require serious attention and careful consideration rather than casual dismissal or patronizing responses. My mother's expression reflected mild surprise at the change in my demeanor, though her fundamental assumptions about my professional status remained unchanged. Her experience with family dynamics had taught her to expect occasional defensive responses to constructive criticism, and she appeared to interpret my formal tone as emotional reaction to uncomfortable but necessary feedback about career limitations. Alexandra, I understand that discussing your career situation might be uncomfortable, but avoiding difficult conversations will not help you develop the ambition and strategic thinking necessary for professional advancement, she responded with the patient tone typically reserved for addressing adolescent resistance to parental guidance. James and Catherine exchanged glances that suggested shared recognition of familiar family patterns, where career discussions occasionally generated temporary tension before returning to established dynamics and accepted hierarchies. Their professional success had provided confidence in their ability to offer valuable guidance to less accomplished family members, and they appeared prepared for standard defensive reactions to well-intentioned advice. Jennifer maintained polite interest while reviewing her smartphone for medical emergency notifications that might require immediate attention, demonstrating the multitasking capabilities that characterized her approach to both professional responsibilities and family obligations. Her surgical training had developed skills in rapid assessment and priority management that were evident even during social situations. The moment had arrived for delivering information that would fundamentally transform every person's understanding of professional achievement, family dynamics, and the assumptions that had shaped years of condescending interactions and misplaced concern about my career development. The revelation would necessarily involve explaining both the scope of my business success and the strategic reasons for maintaining elaborate deception over an extended period. The technology company where you believe I work as an administrative assistant is called Meridian Technologies, I continued, maintaining the measured tone that characterized my most important business communications. The company specializes in advanced cybersecurity solutions, utilizing artificial intelligence algorithms that provide enterprise-level protection for corporate, government, and international clients. This initial information was delivered as straightforward factual background, establishing the professional context necessary for understanding the more significant revelations that would follow. The description was designed to demonstrate both the complexity of the business sector and the sophisticated nature of the technological solutions involved in daily operations. My mother nodded with polite attention, processing this information as additional detail about the administrative work environment rather than recognizing any implications about my actual role or responsibilities within the organization. Her understanding of technology businesses remained limited to general concepts about computer companies and software development, without appreciation for the strategic complexity or financial scope of modern cybersecurity operations. The company was founded 7 years ago by someone who recognized significant market opportunities for innovative security solutions that could provide superior protection while remaining accessible to organizations without extensive technical resources. I continued, building toward the central revelation through systematic disclosure of relevant background information. James demonstrated mild professional interest in the business description, as corporate law frequently involved technology companies and cybersecurity compliance issues. His experience with merger and acquisition transactions had provided exposure to various business models and valuation methodologies that characterized successful technology enterprises. Meridian Technologies has developed proprietary algorithms that utilize machine learning capabilities to identify and respond to cyber threats in real time, creating security systems that become more effective over time rather than requiring constant manual updates and technical support, I explained, providing sufficient technical detail to demonstrate the sophisticated nature of the business operations. Catherine's investment banking background enabled her to recognize the potential financial implications of advanced cybersecurity technology, particularly solutions that addressed growing market demands for automated security systems. Her professional experience included evaluating technology companies for investment opportunities and understanding the revenue models that characterized successful software enterprises. The family members were processing this information as interesting background about my work environment, without yet recognizing the fundamental misconceptions that were about to be corrected through continued disclosure. Their attention remained focused on the technology descriptions, rather than considering the implications for my actual role within the organization. The company's client base includes Fortune 500 corporations, federal government agencies, international financial institutions, and healthcare organizations that require the highest levels of data protection and threat prevention, I continued, establishing the scope and prestige of the business relationships that characterized Meridian Technologies' market position. This information began generating more focused attention from family members who could recognize the significance of serving such high-profile clients and the professional expertise that would be required for maintaining relationships with organizations that had stringent security requirements and demanding performance standards. My mother's expression reflected growing curiosity about the connection between these impressive business details and my administrative role within the organization. Her understanding of corporate hierarchies suggested that even administrative staff at successful technology companies might have more complex responsibilities than typical clerical positions. The company's annual revenue currently exceeds $50 million with profit margins that reflect both operational efficiency and premium pricing for innovative solutions that competitors cannot match, I stated, providing financial context that would be necessary for understanding the complete scope of the revelation about to unfold. The financial figures commanded immediate attention from all family members, whose professional experience enabled them to recognize the substantial business success represented by such revenue levels and profit performance. The numbers indicated a highly successful enterprise that had achieved significant market penetration and competitive advantage within the cybersecurity industry. James's legal expertise included frequent involvement with companies of similar size and financial performance, providing him with appreciation for the complex business operations and strategic decision-making required to achieve such financial results. His experience with corporate clients had taught him to recognize the indicators of substantial business success and market leadership. Catherine's investment banking background enabled her to understand the valuation implications of the financial performance I had described, recognizing that a privately held technology company with such revenue and profit margins would represent substantial asset value and investment opportunity for potential acquirers or equity partners. The moment for the central revelation had arrived, and I could see that my family members were beginning to question the disconnect between the impressive business description and their understanding of my administrative role within the organization. Their professional experience was providing them with sufficient context to recognize that something significant was about to be revealed. Meridian Technologies was founded by me, I stated with quiet certainty, allowing the words to settle across the dining room like stones dropped into still water. I am the majority owner, chief executive officer, and primary developer of the artificial intelligence algorithms that form the foundation of our cybersecurity solutions. The silence that followed this revelation was absolute and profound, creating a suspended moment where years of assumptions and misconceptions hung in the air like dust motes caught in chandelier light. Each family member processed the information according to their own professional framework and personal understanding of business success, while simultaneously grappling with the complete inversion of everything they had believed about my career and capabilities. My mother's face registered a sequence of emotions that moved rapidly from confusion through surprise towards something approaching shock as the implications of this information began penetrating her established understanding of family hierarchy and professional achievement. Her entire framework for evaluating my career development had been based on fundamentally incorrect information about my actual role and responsibilities. James's legal training enabled him to recognize the magnitude of what I had just revealed. Understanding that founding and successfully operating a company with $50 million in annual revenue represented extraordinary business achievement that exceeded his own professional accomplishments, despite years of career advancement and partnership attainment. Catherine's investment banking expertise provided her with immediate appreciation for the financial implications of majority ownership in a profitable technology company. Recognizing that my equity stake represented substantial personal wealth, that far exceeded her own compensation and accumulated assets despite her success in financial services. Jennifer's medical background had not prepared her for evaluating business success, but her general intelligence enabled her to recognize that the revelation represented a fundamental shift in family dynamics and professional hierarchies that had been established through years of career comparison and achievement recognition. "I don't understand," my mother said finally, her voice carrying uncertainty and confusion that reflected the difficulty of processing information that contradicted such deeply held beliefs about professional capabilities and family roles. "You said you work as an administrative assistant. You described your job as answering phones and managing correspondence." The questions revealed the cognitive dissonance created by the collision between established assumptions and newly revealed reality. Her mind was struggling to reconcile 7 years of consistent information about my administrative role with the extraordinary business success that I had just disclosed. "Those descriptions were technically accurate but strategically incomplete," I replied, maintaining the calm professionalism that had characterized my approach to this revelation. "I do perform administrative functions for Meridian Technologies, including managing correspondence and coordinating meetings. However, these responsibilities are performed in my capacity as Chief Executive Officer rather than as clerical support staff." The explanation provided clarity about how the deception had been maintained through strategic omissions and carefully chosen language that satisfied casual inquiry while avoiding detailed discussions that might reveal the complete truth about my professional status and business ownership. The decision to maintain privacy about my actual role was initially motivated by client confidentiality requirements and competitive considerations that demanded discretion about business relationships and technological capabilities, I continued, providing context for the elaborate information management that had sustained the administrative assistant narrative for such an extended period. The family members were beginning to understand not only the scope of my professional success, but also the sophisticated deception that had been necessary to protect both business interests and personal privacy while maintaining family relationships and social interactions that had been based on completely inaccurate assumptions. Over time, the privacy protection evolved into a more comprehensive approach to managing family dynamics and avoiding the complications that might have resulted from discussing business operations and financial performance during family gatherings. I explained, acknowledging the psychological and social factors that had sustained the deception beyond its original business purposes. The revelation was transforming the dining room atmosphere from comfortable family gathering into something resembling a business meeting or professional presentation, where substantial information was being shared and processed by people whose expertise enabled them to understand both the magnitude of what had been disclosed and the implications for their previous assumptions and attitudes. My mother remained silent as she processed information that required fundamental revision of her understanding about professional success, family achievement, and the daughter whose career limitations had been a source of maternal concern and disappointment for several years. The discovery that her assessments had been based on completely false information created psychological challenges that extended beyond simple surprise into questions about judgment and perception. The evening that had begun with familiar patterns of professional comparison and career advice was transforming into a watershed moment that would necessarily redefine family relationships, social dynamics, and the fundamental assumptions that had shaped years of interaction and mutual understanding. The chandelier continued its gentle movement above the mahogany table, as my family absorbed information that would permanently alter their understanding of success, achievement, and the remarkable capacity for hidden accomplishment that had been demonstrated through 7 years of strategic deception and authentic business excellence. The revelation had created a fundamental shift in the dining room's atmosphere that extended far beyond the immediate shock of learning that their assumptions about my professional status had been completely incorrect. Each family member was processing the information through their own professional lens and personal framework for understanding business success, while simultaneously grappling with the broader implications for family dynamics and their previous attitudes toward my career development. My mother remained seated at the head of the table, her hands folded in her lap as she stared at the centerpiece arrangement, with the focused attention of someone attempting to reorganize their entire understanding of professional achievement and family hierarchy. The elegant floral display, carefully selected to complement the dining room's sophisticated aesthetic, had become her focal point during this period of cognitive restructuring and emotional processing. The woman who had spent decades managing public relations campaigns and controlling family narratives was confronting information that challenged her fundamental assumptions about success metrics and personal capability assessment. Her professional expertise in communication and perception management had not prepared her for the discovery that she had been systematically wrong about such a significant aspect of her daughter's professional life. $50 million in annual revenue, she repeated slowly, as if speaking the words aloud might help her mind accept information that seemed to contradict everything she had believed about my career trajectory and business capabilities. You built a technology company that generates $50 million in annual revenue, and I thought you were answering phones for someone else's business. The statement encapsulated the complete inversion of reality that the evening's revelation had created, demonstrating the magnitude of the misconception that had shaped years of family interactions and maternal concern about my professional development. Her voice carried a mixture of amazement and something approaching embarrassment as she began to understand the scope of her misunderstanding. James had been silent since my disclosure, his legal training evident in his methodical approach to processing complex information and evaluating its implications for established relationships and previous assumptions. His partnership experience at Morrison, Sterling & Associates had provided extensive exposure to successful business operations and entrepreneurial achievement, enabling him to recognize the extraordinary nature of what I had accomplished. The legal structure alone for a company of that size and complexity would require sophisticated planning and ongoing compliance management, he said finally, his professional expertise informing his appreciation for the business achievement I had described. Corporate governance, intellectual property protection, international contracts, employment law compliance, regulatory relationships with federal agencies. The operational requirements would be substantial. His analysis demonstrated recognition that building and operating Meridian Technologies had demanded capabilities and expertise that extended far beyond the administrative functions that had characterized family understanding of my professional role. The legal complexity of managing a multinational cybersecurity company required strategic thinking and executive decision-making that contradicted every assumption about my career limitations. Catherine's investment banking background had provided her with immediate understanding of the financial implications of majority ownership in a profitable technology enterprise. Her expertise in business valuation and market analysis enabled her to calculate the approximate value of my equity stake and recognize the substantial personal wealth that successful technology entrepreneurship had generated. Private technology companies with that revenue profile and growth trajectory typically trade at multiples of 8 to 12 times annual revenue, she stated with the precision that characterized her professional analysis of investment opportunities. Conservative valuation would place company worth between $400 and $600 million. If you maintain majority ownership, your personal net worth would exceed anything our family has ever achieved. The financial analysis provided concrete context for understanding not only the business success that I had built, but also the personal financial security that had resulted from years of strategic decision-making and successful market execution. Her calculations revealed that my professional achievements had generated wealth that surpassed the combined assets of all other family members, despite their own considerable success in traditional professional careers. Jennifer's medical training had not provided specific preparation for evaluating business success, but her analytical intelligence enabled her to recognize the broader implications of the evening's revelations for family relationships and social dynamics. Her surgical experience had taught her to remain calm during unexpected developments and process complex information systematically rather than reacting emotionally to surprising circumstances. This explains so many things that never made sense before, she observed with the clinical objectivity that characterized her approach to problem-solving and pattern recognition. The international travel, the upgraded housing, the financial flexibility that seemed inconsistent with administrative salary levels. The pieces fit together completely once you understand the actual professional context. Her comment highlighted the numerous inconsistencies that had accumulated over time as business success created lifestyle changes that were difficult to explain through the administrative assistant narrative. The observation demonstrated how careful attention to detail could have revealed the deception much earlier if family members had been motivated to question the established assumptions about my career status. The silence that followed these initial responses was different from the shocked quiet that had greeted my original revelation. This was the contemplative silence of people processing information that required fundamental revision of their understanding about family dynamics, professional achievement, and the assumptions that had shaped years of interaction and mutual perception. My mother's expression had evolved from confusion through surprise toward something that resembled a mixture of pride and regret, as she began to understand both the magnitude of my accomplishment and the implications of her previous dismissive attitudes toward my career development. The discovery that her concerns about my professional limitations had been based on completely false information created complex emotions that extended beyond simple surprise. "I owe you an apology," she said finally, her voice carrying the weight of accumulated misunderstanding and years of condescending attitudes based on inaccurate assumptions. "I have spent years expressing concern about your career development and professional ambitions, when you were actually building something extraordinary that none of us understood or appreciated." The apology represented acknowledgement not only of factual errors about my professional status, but also recognition of the emotional impact that systematic underestimation had created over an extended period. Her words demonstrated understanding that the family's treatment of my career had been based on fundamental misconceptions that had affected both personal relationships and family dynamics. "But I need to understand why you maintained this deception for such an extended period," she continued, moving beyond apology toward the practical questions that the revelation had created. "What circumstances required such elaborate privacy, protection, and why did you feel unable to share this success with your family?" The question addressed the strategic considerations that had motivated the initial decision to protect business confidentiality as well as the psychological factors that had sustained the administrative assistant identity long after its original purpose had been fulfilled. The answer required explanation of both business requirements and personal choices that had shaped the approach to family communication. The initial decision was driven by client confidentiality requirements that are standard in the cybersecurity industry, I explained, providing context for the business considerations that had necessitated discretion about company operations and client relationships. Government contracts and financial services clients demanded absolute privacy about their security measures and vendor relationships, making public discussion of our business operations impossible. This explanation addressed the legitimate business requirements that had justified initial privacy protection while establishing the foundation for understanding how temporary confidentiality measures had evolved into comprehensive information management over several years. The cybersecurity sector requires discretion about technological capabilities, client relationships, and operational methods that could be compromised through casual social conversation. I continued, demonstrating how industry-specific requirements had created genuine constraints on information sharing that extended beyond simple family communication. The business justification provided rational explanation for the initial deception, while preparing the foundation for addressing the more complex psychological and social factors that had sustained the administrative assistant narrative beyond its original functional requirements. However, the decision to maintain the administrative assistant identity evolved beyond business necessity into a more comprehensive approach to managing family dynamics and avoiding complications that might have resulted from discussing substantial business success during family gatherings, I acknowledged, addressing the personal considerations that had influenced long-term communication strategies. This admission demonstrated recognition that the deception had served purposes beyond legitimate confidentiality requirements, including psychological protection from family dynamics that might have been challenging to navigate if the scope of my professional success had been publicly known. I was concerned about how dramatic business success might affect family relationships and social interactions that had been comfortable and predictable under the existing understanding of professional hierarchy and achievement comparison, I explained, providing insight into the social considerations that had influenced the decision to maintain privacy about business accomplishments. The explanation revealed awareness that substantial professional success often creates complex family dynamics and social pressures that can be difficult to manage effectively, particularly when achievement levels exceed those of siblings and parents who had established their own professional identities and social status. James demonstrated understanding of these concerns through his own experience with professional advancement and the family dynamics that had accompanied his partnership, achievement at Morrison Sterling and Associates. His legal career had provided exposure to the complexities that accompany substantial professional success and the social relationships that can be affected by dramatic changes in status and financial capability. Professional success at this level does create complicated social dynamics, he acknowledged, drawing from his experience with high-stakes legal practice and the relationship challenges that accompany substantial career achievement. The responsibility and isolation that come with business ownership and executive authority can be difficult for family members to understand or relate to effectively. His comment demonstrated recognition that my concerns about family dynamics had been legitimate, and that the decision to maintain privacy about business success reflected realistic assessment of potential social complications rather than simple deception or lack of trust in family relationships. Catherine's investment banking experience had provided her with similar exposure to the social complexities that accompany substantial financial success and professional achievement. Her work with high-net-worth clients had taught her about the relationship challenges that often result from dramatic wealth creation and the careful navigation required to maintain authentic personal connections. Wealth and business success can fundamentally change how people interact with you, she observed with the insight that characterized her professional experience with successful entrepreneurs and business executives. Family relationships are particularly vulnerable to these changes because they involve both emotional connections and practical considerations about financial disparity and social status. Her analysis provided validation for the concerns that had influenced my decision to maintain privacy about business accomplishments, while highlighting the sophisticated understanding of social dynamics that had informed the strategic approach to family communication over several years. The conversation was evolving from initial shock and confusion toward deeper understanding of the complex considerations that had shaped my approach to family relationships and professional disclosure. Each family member was processing the information through their own professional experience while developing appreciation for the careful thought and strategic planning that had characterized the decision to maintain elaborate deception. The dining room atmosphere had transformed from comfortable family gathering into something resembling a professional consultation, where complex business and personal matters were being discussed with the serious attention they deserved. The revelation had elevated the conversation beyond typical family dynamics into territory that required mature consideration of business ethics, family relationships, and the balance between privacy and transparency. My mother's expression reflected growing understanding of both the business achievement and the thoughtful approach to family communication that had characterized my professional development over the past 7 years. Her decades of experience in public relations had taught her to appreciate the complexity of managing information flow and controlling narratives in ways that preserve both professional effectiveness and personal relationships. I am beginning to understand the sophistication that was required to maintain such comprehensive privacy while building and operating a successful international business, she said, her tone reflecting genuine respect for the strategic thinking and execution capability that had made both business success and family deception possible. The acknowledgement represented a fundamental shift in her assessment of my professional capabilities and personal judgment, moving from concern about career limitations toward recognition of extraordinary achievement that had been accomplished. Through careful planning and sustained execution over multiple years, the evening had transformed from routine family dinner into a watershed moment that would necessarily redefine relationships, social dynamics, and the fundamental assumptions that had shaped years of interaction and mutual understanding. The revelation would continue generating implications and conversations that extended far beyond the immediate shock of learning that their assumptions about professional hierarchy and family achievement had been completely incorrect. The conversation had reached a natural pause where each family member was processing information that required fundamental reconstruction of their understanding about professional achievement, family dynamics, and the assumptions that had guided years of interaction. The dining room maintained its elegant atmosphere, but the social dynamics had transformed irreversibly as the revelation continued generating implications that extended far beyond the immediate disclosure of my business ownership. My mother rose from her seat with deliberate precision, moving toward the antique sideboard where family photographs were displayed in carefully selected frames that represented decades of significant moments and achievements. Her movements reflected the measured consideration that characterized her approach to processing complex information and managing situations that required careful thought and strategic response. She selected a photograph from my Stanford graduation ceremony, examining the image with renewed attention to details that had not seemed significant when the picture was originally displayed. The photograph captured the moment when I received recognition for academic excellence in computer science, an achievement that had been acknowledged but not fully appreciated within the context of family expectations about career development and professional trajectory. This photograph was taken 7 years ago, just before you launched Meridian Technologies, she observed, her voice carrying recognition of the temporal connection between academic achievement and entrepreneurial success that had not been apparent when the family understood my career in terms of administrative employment rather than business ownership. The timing correlation demonstrated how my educational foundation had provided the technical expertise and analytical capabilities necessary for developing the cybersecurity innovations that became the basis for substantial business success. The photograph represented not just academic accomplishment, but the preparation phase for entrepreneurial achievement that had transformed theoretical knowledge into practical business application. Your research thesis focused on artificial intelligence applications in cybersecurity threat detection, she continued, demonstrating recall of academic details that had seemed merely theoretical when family discussions focused on conventional career paths rather than entrepreneurial innovation. The work you described as academic exercise was actually the foundation for the proprietary algorithms that built your company. This recognition revealed how academic achievements that had been viewed as preparatory education were actually the developmental phase of business innovations that would generate substantial commercial success and establish my position as a technology industry leader. The academic work had not been separate from professional development, but rather the foundation for entrepreneurial capabilities that exceeded conventional career advancement. James approached the sideboard where additional family photographs documented various professional milestones and achievements that had been celebrated during previous family gatherings. His legal training had developed skills in evidence analysis and pattern recognition that enabled him to identify previously overlooked connections between academic preparation, professional development, and business success. The international conferences and professional development programs that you described as company-sponsored training were actually industry leadership opportunities where you were presenting your research and building strategic business relationships, he stated, demonstrating how his legal expertise enabled recognition of professional activities that had been mischaracterized through the administrative assistant narrative. His analysis revealed how activities that had been explained as employee benefits were actually executive responsibilities that reflected my leadership position within the cybersecurity industry and the professional recognition that accompanied successful business development and technological innovation. Catherine had remained seated at the dining table, but her expression reflected the analytical processing that characterized her approach to evaluating complex financial information and business performance metrics. Her investment banking background provided frameworks for understanding the broader implications of the business success that had been revealed through the evening's disclosure. The lifestyle changes that seemed inconsistent with administrative salary levels were actually reflecting the financial rewards of successful business ownership and profitable company operations, she analyzed with the precision that characterized her professional approach to wealth assessment and financial planning considerations. Her observation demonstrated how apparent inconsistencies in my financial capability had been resolved through understanding of the actual business context and professional status that generated income levels sufficient to support the housing, upgrades, travel patterns, and lifestyle choices that had been difficult to explain through conventional employment compensation. Jennifer maintained her position at the table while processing the revelation through her medical training in systematic analysis and evidence-based conclusion development. Her professional experience had taught her to recognize patterns and synthesize complex information into coherent understanding that addressed apparent contradictions and unexplained phenomena. The confidence and professional demeanor that seemed unusual for someone in an administrative role were actually reflecting executive experience and business leadership responsibilities that required sophisticated communication skills and strategic decision-making capabilities, she observed with the clinical objectivity that characterized her analytical approach. Her analysis highlighted how personal characteristics that had seemed inconsistent with the administrative assistant role were actually appropriate for executive leadership and business ownership responsibilities that had been concealed through strategic information management and careful communication choices. The family was beginning to understand not only the scope of my professional achievement, but also the sophisticated approach to privacy management that had enabled maintenance of separate personal and professional identities over an extended period. The revelation was generating appreciation for both business success and the strategic thinking that had protected confidential information while preserving family relationships. My mother returned to her seat at the head of the table, carrying the Stanford graduation photograph that had provided visual reminder of the academic foundation underlying my entrepreneurial success. Her expression reflected complex emotions that included pride in my achievement combined with regret about the misunderstanding that had characterized family interactions for several years. I need to understand the full scope of what you have accomplished, she stated with the direct approach that characterized her professional background in public relations and strategic communication. The business success you have described represents extraordinary achievement that deserves proper recognition and family celebration rather than concealment and systematic underestimation. Her request for comprehensive information demonstrated recognition that the evening's revelation had provided only basic details about business operations and professional accomplishments that warranted more thorough understanding and appropriate acknowledgement within family relationships and social contexts. The opportunity had arrived to provide detailed information about Meridian Technologies that would demonstrate both the scope of business success and the strategic vision that had guided company development from startup concept through international expansion and market leadership within the cybersecurity industry. Meridian Technologies currently employs 147 people across offices in San Francisco, Austin, London, and Singapore. I began, providing organizational context that illustrated the international scope and substantial operational complexity that characterized current business operations. The employment figures and geographic distribution demonstrated how the company had evolved from individual entrepreneurship into multinational corporation with sophisticated operational requirements and strategic management challenges that extended far beyond the simple business concept that had motivated initial company formation. Our client base includes 37 Fortune 500 corporations, 12 federal government agencies, 18 international financial institutions, and 43 healthcare organizations that rely on our cybersecurity solutions for protecting critical data and maintaining operational security, I continued, establishing the prestige and strategic importance of business relationships that had been developed through years of professional excellence and technological innovation. The client portfolio demonstrated both the commercial success and social responsibility that characterized Meridian Technologies' approach to business development and market positioning within sectors that required the highest levels of security expertise and reliable performance standards. The proprietary artificial intelligence algorithms that form the foundation of our cybersecurity solutions have been granted 17 patents in the United States and international markets, creating intellectual property assets that provide competitive advantages and long-term business value, I explained, highlighting the innovation capabilities that had distinguished our technological approach from conventional cybersecurity products. The patent portfolio represented both the technical expertise that had enabled business success and the strategic foresight that had protected intellectual property through formal legal mechanisms while establishing barriers to competitive replication of our technological innovations. Annual research and development investment exceeds $8 million, supporting continuous innovation and product enhancement that maintains our technological leadership within rapidly evolving cybersecurity markets, I added, demonstrating the commitment to ongoing excellence that had sustained competitive advantages and enabled continued business growth. The research investment figures illustrated both the financial resources available for technological advancement and the strategic priorities that had guided business development toward long-term market leadership rather than short-term profit maximization. James processed this information through his legal expertise in corporate structure and intellectual property management, recognizing the sophisticated business planning and legal compliance that would be required for maintaining such complex operations across multiple jurisdictions and regulatory environments. The legal and regulatory compliance requirements for operating in multiple countries while serving government clients would require sophisticated legal infrastructure and ongoing professional management, he observed, demonstrating appreciation for the business complexity that had been concealed through the administrative assistant narrative. His legal analysis provided validation for the business achievement while highlighting the professional capabilities that had been necessary for building and operating such a complex enterprise without the family recognition or external support that might typically accompany entrepreneurial success of this magnitude. Catherine's investment banking experience enabled her to recognize the financial sophistication that would be required for managing international operations, currency exposures, and the capital allocation decisions that characterized successful technology company growth and expansion strategies. International expansion and multi-currency operations would require sophisticated financial management and strategic planning capabilities that extend far beyond conventional business administration, she analyzed, recognizing the executive capabilities that had been demonstrated through successful business development and operational management. Her financial analysis provided additional context for understanding both the business achievement and the professional competence that had enabled such substantial success without family awareness or external recognition that might have simplified the challenges of entrepreneurial development. The conversation was evolving toward comprehensive understanding of not only the business success, but also the personal strength and professional capability that had enabled such extraordinary achievement. while maintaining family relationships based on systematic deception about career status and professional responsibilities. My mother's expression reflected growing appreciation for both the magnitude of business accomplishment and the careful strategic thinking that had enabled protection of confidential information while preserving family harmony and social relationships that remained important despite their complexity and occasional misconceptions about professional capabilities. The achievement you have described represents extraordinary success that reflects not only business capability, but also personal strength and strategic vision that I had not recognized or appreciated, she acknowledged, demonstrating recognition of both professional accomplishment and personal characteristics that had enabled such substantial achievement. The acknowledgement represented fundamental revision of family understanding about professional capability, personal strength, and the assumptions that had guided years of interaction and mutual assessment within family relationships and social dynamics. The evening had transformed from routine family gathering into recognition ceremony, where years of hidden achievement were finally receiving appropriate acknowledgement and family celebration that had been deferred through strategic privacy management and protective deception about business success and professional status. The revelation would continue generating implications for family relationships, social interactions, and personal recognition that extended far beyond the immediate adjustment to accurate information about professional achievement and business success. The truth had created foundation for authentic relationships based on complete understanding rather than protective misconceptions about career development and personal capability. The profound implications of the evening's revelation extended far beyond the immediate family dynamics to challenge fundamental assumptions about success recognition, professional achievement measurement, and the systematic biases that influence how society evaluates individual capability and contribution. The dining room had become a classroom where 7 years of accumulated misconceptions were being deconstructed and replaced with accurate understanding of entrepreneurial excellence and strategic business development. My mother had positioned herself at the mahogany table in a manner that reflected her transition from family gathering hostess to engaged participant in a serious business discussion. Her decades of experience in public relations had developed sophisticated appreciation for the complexity of managing information flow and controlling narratives, enabling her to recognize the strategic sophistication that had been required to maintain comprehensive privacy while building international business operations. The realization that her assessment of my career limitations had been based on fundamentally incorrect information was generating complex emotional responses that extended beyond simple embarrassment to include genuine admiration for the professional capability and strategic thinking that had enabled such extraordinary achievement without family awareness or external recognition. Her professional background provided frameworks for understanding both the business success and the information management strategies that had protected confidential operations. The cybersecurity industry represents one of the most critical sectors in the modern economy, she observed, drawing from her public relations expertise to place Meridian Technologies within broader technological and social contexts. The clients you described rely on your innovations to protect national security information, financial systems, and healthcare data that affects millions of people. The responsibility and social impact extend far beyond typical business operations. Her analysis demonstrated recognition that my professional achievement involved not only financial success, but also significant social responsibility and technological contribution to critical infrastructure protection. The understanding transformed family perception of my career from administrative support role to essential national security function that demanded sophisticated expertise and strategic decision-making capability. James had moved to the window, overlooking the garden, where evening shadows were beginning to create dramatic contrasts across the carefully maintained landscape. His legal training had developed appreciation for the regulatory complexity and compliance requirements that would characterize cybersecurity operations serving government agencies and financial institutions, with stringent security standards and legal obligations. The regulatory environment for cybersecurity companies serving federal agencies requires continuous compliance with evolving security protocols, classified information handling procedures, and international export control regulations, he stated, demonstrating his understanding of the legal sophistication that would be necessary for maintaining the client relationships I had described. His analysis revealed appreciation for the professional expertise and operational complexity that had been concealed through the administrative assistant narrative, while highlighting the substantial business achievement that successful regulatory compliance represented within highly regulated industries and government contracting environments. Catherine remained focused on the financial implications of the business success that had been revealed. But her analysis was expanding beyond immediate valuation considerations to encompass the strategic business decisions and market positioning that had enabled such substantial revenue generation and profit performance within competitive technology markets. The profit margins you described indicate premium pricing power that reflects technological superiority and client dependency rather than competitive commodity pricing, she analyzed with the precision that characterized her investment banking. Expertise. Building such market position requires sustained innovation, superior client service, and strategic brand development that creates competitive moats and pricing advantages. Her financial analysis provided insight into the business strategy and execution excellence that had enabled Meridian Technologies to achieve market leadership and pricing power within cybersecurity markets, characterized by intense competition and rapid technological change. Jennifer had been processing the revelation through her medical training in evidence-based analysis and systematic problem-solving approaches that emphasized thorough evaluation of available information before reaching conclusions about complex situations. Her analytical framework was generating recognition of patterns and connections that had been obscured by the administrative assistant narrative. The international travel patterns, professional confidence, and strategic thinking that seemed inconsistent with administrative responsibilities were actually appropriate indicators of executive leadership and business ownership, she observed. Applying her medical diagnostic skills to family relationship analysis and behavioral pattern recognition, her systematic approach to information evaluation demonstrated how careful attention to evidence and logical analysis could have revealed the true nature of my professional status much earlier if family members had been motivated to question their assumptions about career development and professional capability. The family discussion was evolving beyond immediate processing of surprising information toward deeper consideration of the broader implications for understanding professional achievement, family dynamics, and the systematic biases that influence how people evaluate capability and contribution based on limited information and social prejudices. My mother returned to her position at the head of the table, carrying herself with the renewed confidence that characterized her approach to managing complex situations and strategic communications challenges. Her professional experience had taught her to recognize when circumstances required fundamental adjustment of understanding and approach, rather than superficial modifications of existing strategies. This revelation requires us to examine our assumptions about professional success and family achievement more carefully, she stated with the directness that characterized her approach to addressing significant issues that demanded serious attention and strategic response. We have been measuring success through conventional metrics while failing to recognize extraordinary achievement that was occurring within our own family. Her acknowledgement represented recognition that the evening's disclosure had implications, extending beyond individual family relationships to broader questions about success measurement, achievement recognition, and the systematic underestimation that can occur when people rely on superficial indicators rather than comprehensive understanding of professional capability and contribution. The opportunity had arrived to address these broader themes while providing additional context about the strategic considerations that had guided my approach to business development and family communication over the past 7 years. The conversation required expansion beyond immediate business details to encompass the philosophical and practical considerations that had influenced major life decisions. The decision to maintain privacy about Meridian Technologies reflected recognition that substantial business success often creates complex social dynamics that can be challenging to navigate effectively, I explained, providing insight into the strategic thinking that had guided information management decisions over an extended period. The explanation addressed both practical considerations about business confidentiality and psychological factors related to family relationships and social interactions that had influenced the comprehensive approach to privacy protection and strategic communication. Cybersecurity industry requirements for discretion about client relationships and technological capabilities provided legitimate justification for maintaining confidentiality about business operations, I continued, establishing the professional context that had necessitated careful information management while building and operating international technology company. The business rationale provided foundation for understanding how industry-specific requirements had created genuine constraints on information sharing that extended beyond family communication to encompass all social and professional interactions that might compromise client confidentiality or competitive advantages. However, the decision to maintain the administrative assistant identity also reflected concerns about how dramatic business success might affect family relationships and social dynamics that had been comfortable and predictable under existing understanding of professional hierarchy and achievement levels, I acknowledged, addressing the personal considerations that had influenced long-term communication strategies. This admission demonstrated recognition that the deception had served multiple purposes, including legitimate business confidentiality and practical family relationship management that had enabled preservation of comfortable social dynamics while protecting business operations from unwanted attention or casual discussion that might compromise strategic advantages. The explanation was generating understanding among family members who were beginning to appreciate both the business achievement and the thoughtful approach to managing complex information and relationship challenges that had characterized my professional development over 7 years of sustained business growth and family interaction. James demonstrated appreciation for these considerations through his own experience with professional advancement and the social complications that can accompany substantial career achievement within family and community contexts, where success levels vary significantly among individuals with different professional trajectories and capability levels. Professional success at this magnitude does create complicated relationship dynamics that require careful navigation to preserve authentic connections while managing the practical implications of substantial achievement and financial capability, he observed, drawing from his legal career experience with high-stakes practice and client relationship management. His comment provided validation for the concerns that had influenced my strategic approach to family communication, while demonstrating recognition that the decision to maintain privacy had reflected realistic assessment of social dynamics rather than simple deception or lack of trust in family relationships. Catherine's investment banking experience with high-net-worth clients had provided similar exposure to the relationship challenges that often accompany substantial financial success and professional achievement within family and social contexts, where wealth disparity can create tension and complicate authentic personal connections. Wealth and business success fundamentally change how people interact with you, and family relationships are particularly vulnerable to these changes because they involve emotional connections, complicated by practical considerations about financial disparity and social status. She analyzed with insight derived from professional experience with successful entrepreneurs and business executives. Her analysis provided additional validation for the strategic considerations that had guided my approach to family communication, while highlighting the sophisticated understanding of social dynamics that had informed careful management of information and relationship preservation over multiple years of business development. The conversation was establishing foundation for deeper discussion about the broader implications of hidden achievement and systematic underestimation within family and social contexts, where people make assumptions about capability and contribution based on limited information and conventional success metrics that may not accurately reflect individual accomplishment or potential. My mother's expression reflected growing appreciation for both the magnitude of professional achievement and the strategic wisdom that had guided careful management of complex business and personal considerations over an extended period of substantial growth and family interaction based on incomplete information and protective deception. The sophistication required to build and operate an international technology company while maintaining family relationships based on alternative professional identity demonstrates extraordinary capability in multiple domains, she stated, recognizing both business achievement and personal management skills that had enabled such comprehensive success across professional and personal dimensions. Her acknowledgement represented fundamental revision of family understanding about professional capability, strategic thinking ability, and personal strength that had been systematically underestimated through years of interaction based on inaccurate assumptions about career development and business involvement. The evening was generating recognition that extraordinary achievement often requires extraordinary discretion, and that authentic success may be invisible to people who measure accomplishment through conventional metrics and public recognition, rather than actual contribution and strategic impact within critical sectors of economic and social infrastructure. The revelation had transformed family understanding not only of my individual achievement, but also of broader questions about success recognition, professional evaluation, and the systematic biases that can prevent accurate assessment of capability and contribution when people rely on superficial indicators, rather than comprehensive understanding of individual accomplishment and social impact. The dining room atmosphere had evolved from comfortable family gathering into educational experience, where assumptions about professional achievement and family dynamics were being systematically examined and revised based on accurate information about business success and strategic thinking that had been concealed through years of careful information management and relationship preservation strategies. The conversation would continue generating implications for family relationships and social understanding that extended far beyond immediate adjustment to accurate information about professional status and business ownership toward broader recognition of the complexity that characterizes authentic achievement and the strategic considerations that often guide successful people in managing information and relationships effectively. The profound shift in family dynamics continued to unfold as each member processed the comprehensive implications of discovering that their fundamental assumptions about professional achievement and family hierarchy had been systematically incorrect for 7 years. The revelation was generating not merely surprise or embarrassment, but genuine intellectual and emotional transformation that would necessarily reshape all future interactions and mutual understanding within established family relationships. My mother had begun to demonstrate the analytical capabilities that had made her successful in public relations and strategic communications throughout her professional career. Her ability to process complex information and recognize broader patterns was enabling her to understand not only the magnitude of my business achievement, but also the sophisticated strategic thinking that had guided both entrepreneurial success and information management over an extended period of substantial growth and development. The recognition that she had been systematically wrong about such fundamental aspects of her daughter's professional life was generating profound reassessment of her own judgment and evaluation capabilities. Her decades of experience in managing corporate communications and public relations campaigns had not prepared her for the discovery that her own family assessment had been based on such comprehensively inaccurate information about career development and business involvement. The implications of this revelation extend far beyond our family dinner conversation, she stated, with the strategic perspective that characterized her approach to significant communications challenges. If I could be so completely wrong about your professional achievements while maintaining regular contact and ongoing conversations about career development, what other assumptions about success and capability might be equally inaccurate in my professional and personal assessments? Her question demonstrated recognition that the evening's disclosure had created an opportunity for broader examination of evaluation methods and assumption-making processes that extended beyond immediate family relationships to encompass professional, judgment, and social assessment capabilities that influenced multiple aspects of personal and business decision-making. The self-reflection represented a fundamental characteristic of successful professionals who possess sufficient intellectual honesty to examine their own assumptions and adjust their understanding when presented with evidence that contradicts established beliefs about capability assessment and achievement recognition. James had moved from the window to rejoin the family gathering at the mahogany table, bringing with him the measured consideration that characterized his approach to complex legal analysis and strategic thinking. His partnership experience at Morrison, Sterling & Associates had developed sophisticated capabilities in evidence evaluation and logical reasoning that were enabling him to process the business information through multiple analytical frameworks. The legal and regulatory complexity of operating a cybersecurity company serving government clients represents extraordinary professional achievement that requires capabilities extending far beyond conventional business management, he analyzed, with the precision that characterized his corporate law expertise. The intellectual property development, international compliance requirements, and security clearance protocols would demand sustained excellence across multiple specialized domains. His analysis demonstrated appreciation for the comprehensive professional capabilities that had been necessary for building and operating Meridian Technologies.